every COP is sort of touted as being the most significant COP uh, since the Paris Agreement was adopted. But I think for this COP, there's some merit in that, and there's a number of reasons why that's the case. Firstly, the guidance to implement the Paris Agreement is now in place and it's fully operational. So COP29 in Baku adopted the last of the guidance, particularly around Article 6 and carbon markets. So the Paris Agreement is now fully operational, and a big part of the story of the inevitability process in terms of negotiations is now settled. Secondly, the first ambition cycle under the Paris Agreement will have been completed by the time we get to Belém. And that comprises the first global stocktake that took place in COP29, the submissions of new NDCs. We still see them coming through, but many more are going to come through by the time we get to COP30, and also the submission of the biennial transparency reports. And of course, there's increasing calls for a focus on implementation and away from the focus on negotiations that we've had in the past. The rise of populism and very clear attacks on multilateralism. We have the fact that the US is going to withdraw from the Paris Agreement, and that will take effect on the 20th of January next year. Until recently, we've had emissions rising and ever growing impacts, both in frequency and in severity around the world. And we have a situation where the Paris Agreement is founded around the notion of nationally determined contributions or national climate targets. And as of a few days ago, at least, only around 60 out of the 196 parties had submitted those, and a majority of the G20 countries still haven't come forward. So all of that puts the regime at risk. And it sort of led to a situation where there's a strong political recognition that was first articulated earlier this year in March by ministers at the Petersburg Climate Dialogue, that COP30 has to demonstrate that multilateralism is still relevant and working, and that it's relevant to the sort of concerns and priorities of people around the world. So when I speak to journalists and they ask what's going to be new that's coming out of COP30, I think the headline is, if we come out of COP30 demonstrating that the Paris Agreement is alive and functioning, I think in the current context, that is pretty newsworthy of itself. Another important thing is that we need to acknowledge and celebrate the achievements of the Paris Agreement. If we were going into a political campaign for election, we wouldn't lead by all the things that we'd failed to do and all the things we still need to do. We would be leading by showing what we have achieved so far. So while there's a long way to go, if you look back at how far we've come in just 10 years, there's a lot that's been achieved, including over 190 countries having national climate plans, which was definitely not the case before.